No, we're ready to go, Tom. You're absolutely right.
Oh, I did see something. I haven't looked at it very closely. Oh, okay. I'll take it out. Thank you.
Would you stand with me for the invocation and pledge allegiance, please? Councilman Debbie, please.
No, the invocation.
Oh, we're going to do that first.
Yes.
Diane, would you please lead us in prayer?
Sure. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you, Lord, for this day and for this occasion. Lord, we thank you so much for our city, Vienna. Lord, we're thankful for each council member, Lord, that you placed in this position. Father, we pray and ask God that you would just be with them. Lord, give them wisdom and discernment as they discuss the issues on the agenda tonight. Father, we're so grateful. We pray that you would just give them a unified approach to serving the citizens of Vienna, Lord. We're so grateful for the privileges that you give us in this country. Lord, you are the one who have ordained government. So I pray, God, that you would just help us to be humble, Lord. Help us never to take the freedoms that we have for granted. And Father, I just ask all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Now, Mr. Bibby.
Join me in the pledge.
Yes, sir, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for January the 27th, 2022. First item on our agenda this evening is our roll call. We have two members absent. We have two members absent and our attorneys out, but having a quorum, we will proceed. First item on our agenda this evening is the public forum. We have one person who's signed up, so Brenda Powell.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Powell. I live at 1409 31st Street in Vienna. I wanted to just bring up a couple things. First, as far as the renewal of the levy, I have asked before and want to ask again if it's a possibility that the city could actually purchase a couple buses and maybe even have a couple part-time people, and that there be a possibility that we could just take care of Vienna as far as the transportation that individuals are needing for the bus system. The other thing is 45th Place, the water project. I just wanted to bring up about the fact that still again, I'm bringing it again, before council, as far as checking with the commissioners, the Wood County commissioners, for protection in regards to the different areas that are in the city that are actually county and their surrounding perimeter of Vienna, that with, I've seen a lot of real estate being sold, and I think we need to make sure that the people, that we're protected, that developers don't come in and do things and then we have to pick it up at some point in time if they annex into the city. So I really think that we need to have something in place to protect us from that, these issues that have been happening. I think it would be a good thing. The other thing on the master plan, I just wanted to make a comment in the fact that as far as the flip book, the digital flip book that was presented the night with Jim Christie, I feel that with the money that was designated to be able to pay him to do that, as far as putting that master plan together, that we should have the opportunity, even though it's just a draft, whatever, we should have that as a public to be able to view that online to see at least what was presented, and so that we know what changes that might be made. So I think it's important. It's taxpayers' money, and we should have that opportunity. Another thing that I just want to mention was Neal's School, and Vienna School, the talking of the closing of those two schools. I feel with Neal's School, it just really is sad that they would want to close that school. It's been there forever, and to me, it is a historical site. It is an old school, and I feel like that we need to preserve history. We've lost a lot of buildings here a lot of homes and different things. And I just hope that we can, preserve that school and make it a historical site to where that it, won't be sold or tore down or whatever. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of council. Thank you.
Hello, Russ.
Hello there.
Nice to see you.
Welcome.
I thought you were going to be gone.
I missed this close.
Oh,
You missed this.
okay.
I did.
The minutes from the council meeting held on January the 13th, 2022 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There are no objections, and the minutes will stand approved as posted. The report of the treasurer will be given at the first meeting in February. We have no unfinished business this evening, and so we'll move right into new business. First item on our agenda this evening is an order authorizing an election for renewal of an existing levy under the provisions of West Virginia Code, Chapter 11, Article 8, Section 16, to provide for the continued operation of the mass transportation bus system. This evening, we have with us Mr. Mike Kesterson, who is the general manager of the bus system, and Andrew Wifter, who represents the bus system. So, gentlemen, whichever one of you would like to say a few words if you need to, and then we'll go right on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening. About every 2 years, we come back to the councils of both cities of Parkersburg and Vienna and ask for, all we ask for is that the council approve the matter to be put to the ballot for voters to vote whether to continue the excess levy that supports in part the operation of the Mid-Ohio Valley Transit Authority, both cities. The breakdown of allocated cost or proposed cost is set forth in the proposed order that I had presented to Mr. Skogstad previously. It's based upon assessment of properties in both city of Vienna and Parkersburg. The levy rate is not being, we're not asking for an increased levy rate. It's the same levy rate that it has been. It's all we're asking council again is to put it to a vote of the citizens of the city of Vienna and Parkersburg. Parkersburg approved on Tuesday night the matter to be put to the voters of Parkersburg. So we're just here asking that the council approve the order to put it to the voters of the city of Vienna in the May election this year.
All right. So this is an order authorizing an election for renewal of an existing levy under the provisions of West Virginia Code, Chapter 11, Article 8, Section 16, to provide for the continued operation of the mass transportation bus system. Are there any questions of these gentlemen before I call the question? Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion.
Well, hold on. Just one thing, and it's not a question. And actually, Mr. Wifter is taking care of this. I think this was originally drafted to be on our January 13th meeting. Section 11 is the language that'll appear on the ballot. And Mr. Wifter's already sent me the corrected version, which I forwarded to Ms. Elam, but it'll, in the language in Section 11, it should read today's the 27th day of January. So if there's any question later about why the one is being substituted in the minutes in place of this one, that's why. It's just a scrivener's error. But that's already been taken care of, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to
Thank you
make
for
sure it
clearing
was
it up,
clear.
Russ. Thank you. All right. No further discussion. I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the order authorizing an election for renewal?
Wait, did you do a motion? Did you have a motion? Is that what you're doing now? Sorry.
Yes,
Okay, sorry.
I'm gonna try.
Sorry.
I'm going to try.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Try again.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion for the approval of an ordinance authorizing the election for renewal of an existing levy under the provisions of West Virginia Code, Chapter 11, Article 8, Section 16, to provide for the continued operation of the mass transportation bus system.
So moved to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Fellows, thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you in 2 years.
Hopefully before.
The city of Vienna is represented on the Transit Authority Board by Tim Pingley and Chuck Knopfsinger. So, those are good men. The second thing on our agenda this evening is simply an update on the 45th Place Waterline project. Last Friday at the Utility Board, the motion was passed to provide for Burgess and Nyepel to prepare the task order for the continuation of that project. And so they are now working on that. As soon as they bring back the task order, then we will know what direction. But at this point, the 45th Place project is on its way.
This is
Okay?
kind of phase 2 of that, if that, correct?
That is right. The first part is
Right.
to authorize the task order. The second part will be to approve the task order, because that's what will tell you what it costs. And then the third step of it is to do the engineering drawing and the bidding things and all that, so that we can actually get it out to get it done. So, but anyway, the first step is to get them to tell us the cost.
Sure, got it.
When do we expect to hear back?
They're really fast, so it won't be too long. Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstand what you're saying then, Mayor. So I thought we were already at what we did at the VUB on Friday. We were at stage 2, which is basically allowing Burgess and Nyepel to finish out the final design phase and then put it out to bid. Because it already had gone through phase 1, so, that cost estimate had already gone out.
We do not have a cost yet. All right? Not a cost for the project, a cost for how much work it's going to require them to prepare the documents to actually get this done. All right? So, all right?
Okay, because I thought my understanding was on Friday it was going out to bid.
Not until we get the task order back,
Okay.
okay? Because we have to approve whatever the cost is to retain their services. All right?
Well, I'm a little confused, but I can follow up with Mr. Metz because he had said we were at number 2 on Friday, not number 1. We've already done that first part.
Okay. Well, we're still waiting for them to come back with the cost. As soon as we get the cost, then we move forward.
Okay.
All right? I mean, it's moving, Kim. That's all I can tell you is it's paperwork from here on out.
Okay.
All right? Any other questions on 45th Place? All right? Then we move on to the last item on our agenda this evening, and that's the discussion of the master plan for parks. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, Tim Roberts, who is the chairman of the park board, has a meeting with Jim Christie to make the final corrections to the master plan. The reason why the master plan was not put out to the public yet is because it was a work in progress, and it's kind of unfair to put out a document like that you know are going to have some changes made to it. Once Mr. Christie makes the final changes based on your comments and other people's recommendations, then a final master plan document will be presented, which will be given out electronically, it will be given out in print, whatever, but that will be the final draft. So I've told Mr. Roberts that I will get him your all's comments by 10 o'clock tomorrow so that he can share them with Mr. Christie. So you all have seen the presentation. You've had a chance to look at the master plan. What other comments would you like passed on to Mr. Christie as far as customizing this master plan?
Go ahead.
I went ahead, my mouth's open, isn't it? I went ahead and, because Tim had emailed us about getting feedback, and I went ahead and sent him my feedback. It was 2 pages, single spaced. I had a lot to say. So just in summary, as far as priorities, because he was kind of asking about, what are your priorities and what's your general feedback? And for me, I feel like the first priority can kind of be bundled. The pool and low-hanging fruit is what I'm looking at. So the low-hanging fruit would be things like Jackson Park, where we're just improving the accessibility, fixing, doing the bridges, making them ADA compliant, doing the sidewalks, connecting the pieces together, those kinds of things that will make a big difference, but it's not a major undertaking. So I feel like that's something that would immediately make a big difference and wouldn't take a long time to do. I also think that the pool is right there with it as a major project. For me personally, I've passed on, I think, it's okay to not have the pool this year. We'll make some adjustments. We'll do some fun things. We'll come up with something creative and not have the pool, get a new one built and move forward with it that way. So I feel like no pool in 2022, yes pool in 2023. I gave him some feedback as far as the locations. I liked being able to think outside the box when he was talking about relocating it, but the area that he was talking about relocating it across from the community building, my main concern with that is access, that everybody would have to walk across 34th Street. And I'm not super comfortable with that, even though he put in some, like, I forget what he called it, not barriers, but like traffic control measures or something like that. Even with that, it's still crossing 34th Street at the bottom of a hill, 2 hills actually. And so I'm not super crazy about that. But as far as the current location and leaving it there, I liked concept A the best. And mainly because I kind of liked having it reminded me more of just our original pool and then adding the splash pad feature and that kind of stuff. So I'm looking here at my notes to see if I can enunciate this a little bit better. My strong opinion is do not get rid of the diving boards. I will give my 14-year-old credit for an idea that he had on how to have both the diving boards and some super slides, is just to alternate their use. So the pool opens at 12 and the diving boards are open at 12. Then when the guards take their break, you rope off the diving boards and you open up the slide. And so for that break, from at 1 o'clock, now it's slide time. And then you just keep alternating throughout the day. It gives them something different and interesting to do. And you still get both worlds. And they could both literally be in the same space in the pool because they wouldn't be used at the same time. So I liked that idea. I think it was pretty good. Let me see here. I do like the climbing walls. I think those are great. I think zero entry is something good. And I really still like that depth of the kiddie pool. So yes, having a splash pad, but I guess maybe I need to understand more about splash pads. Is there any depth to a splash pad or is it just concrete with water? I like the idea of having somewhat of a zero depth into kiddie pool depth pool for those little ones to play in and to get used to. So that's not just concrete with water and 4 feet deep. So I think we need something in between that. I really like the cabana idea for rental, and I also suggested, night parties are always a fun thing. People are throwing birthday parties and doing stuff, and you're having business parties and things. And so having some way to enhance those would be nice, whether it's a movie screen or colored lights or something like that. So to take into consideration those types of events that happen there. So, I do think that, like I said, those two should be our top priorities. I have a lot of feedback on all the rest, but I can just jump in as other people have comments if you'd like, or I can give you a brief rundown, however you'd
So let
like
me
to
ask
do.
you a question about your opinion there. Are you of the opinion to completely eliminate the pool and start all over again with a new design? Or are you saying simply keep the existing pool we have?
Well,
And
I think in concept A, it was mostly, I think the basic footprint of the pool was the same. Sorry, let me flip to it here. Oh my goodness, how many pages
It
here?
is, it doesn't change.
Yeah, I think the basic footprint of it was the same. Yeah, it was mostly then expanding into that, what would that be? Eastern side of the pool, so that we'd go through the fence there, put in that big retaining wall along what is now the exit to the pool and along that curve where Jackson Hill comes down. So you put that large retaining wall there and then do your splash pad, or, as I'm suggesting, adding in with that a zero entry and kiddie pool type space also. And then the current kiddie pool would just be filled in and it would be seating and lounging type area.
okay, so
It's the same footprint. You would have those different features over there in the deep end where you have the slides and the climbing wall. I think the climbing wall is a cool idea too, but you could leave the diving boards and design it in such a way that the lifeguards can see everything and that you alternate the fun stuff.
Okay, so the one thing, I looked at these designs and I've traveled to several other cities that are close to us. And the existing pool that we have is such a large pool that I wonder if there should be some thought given to perhaps instead of having one huge pool area, if we went to two, one smaller, one larger, whatever the design would turn out. In future years, if we have to put a new pool liner in it, it will be much easier to excuse me, a pool liner in smaller components as opposed to that one. I like the fact that there are swimming lanes in there because we've had swim teams in the past. But I think that, the option of not having such a gigantic area to put a new pool liner in might be something that could be looked at.
A thought with that, though, is if this is, and I don't know enough about competitive swimming, if that's regulation and that's a good length for whatever the pool competition would, the swimming competitions would be, I would say leave it that way, but maybe move one of those bigger features like the slides. You don't need 8 or 10 foot depth for a slide. You need, maybe 4 or something like that. So maybe the slides could move over into that area that's closest to the road, kind of where the slide is now, only, maybe just rope that area off. So then if you're having a competition, all you do is unhook the rope and you've got the full length of the pool again, but you've kind of designated that area as the activity area and everything else is just free play. And really the pool fills up. I mean, when you've got a lot of kids in there, you need a full pool like that just for everybody to have their own free play, their own friend groups, their own space without being on top of each other.
Yeah, and I don't know the rules for as far as Olympic-sized pools, whether the length is what we have now. And I prefer the bigger pool, to be honest. But I also know how expensive it is to put a liner in. And it's several $1,000s. And I'm not really saying eliminate the size. It's just if you segment it so that you only have to replace the liner in, say, one section as opposed to the whole thing, it might be something to look at. I'm just throwing out something there.
You mean using the existing pool and just dividing it into
If it could be done.
two
right.
areas?
If it could be done. I don't know. But I just know that it's very expensive to put pool liners in.
But how would that, walk me through how it would be less expensive if you had 2 pool liners to replace instead of 1? I mean,
Size.
but they would both have their own cost. I don't know what it costs for the last one, and I don't know what the pool liners run, but if one full size like we have here now, I'm gonna make something up, costs $10,000, but 2 smaller ones cost $4,000, we're saving $2,000. And so I'm not sure that would be a deciding factor for me, but.
Okay. And honestly, really, the cost is the issue. I mean, if we go with one of these designs on this, we would have to determine, I'm sure it's going to be in excess of $1 million. Okay, we'd have to decide a, financial pathway.
Well, and one of these things too, when we're thinking about designing something like this, I mean, that's a valid point to look at what is the cost of maintenance going to be beyond the reconstruction of it. It's just like when we buy a house or buy a car, can you afford to continue to maintain it? Can you, you could afford the house, but you can't afford to furnish it, or something like that. So we do need to make sure that we can afford and work into our budget whatever maintenance or, if we need to start saving up every year in order to make sure that we can pay for that liner in 10 years or whenever, however long it takes to do that, then we do that. But,
Okay,
yeah, that would be my pool conversation.
Roger?
Would both
Well-
liners likely wear out at the same time?
Depends on usage, Tom, and the sun has a big factor in it. Okay? It's a public pool. There's no, they warrant the pool liners for a number of years, but, it just depends on how much usage it has, and, the sun fades them after a while, and, but, that's a large area right there. So,
Olympic-sized pool's what, 50 meters, 25, I think.
I don't know, Russ.
I'm
Okay.
trying to, my son kids swam. I'm trying to find out how.
Okay,
I'll use Wikipedia.
okay, great.
When my boys swam competitively up there, it was my understanding that it was a regulation, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I know it has to be a certain length to have meets,
Yeah.
because you have to be, but the pool at the Y, they have meets over there a lot too. So, but, all right, your comments, Roger.
Is it meters?
Well, my comments on the plan was, and I mean, Jim Christie presented quite an extensive, very good master plan. And wouldn't it be nice if we could be able to do all that? Wouldn't that be wonderful? But the reality is, and we know that we can't. So, my thoughts, over the last couple of weeks or so, as far as priorities, also leads off with the pool. We know the problems with the pool now. We know how bad a shape it's in. I think pool needs to be the number one priority. Now, as far as which design concept, I don't have any real big feelings either way on which concept to use. I hate to see the pool closed for 2022. But if that's what we need to do to get what we want, then we'll just have to go with it. Having said that, I have talked to some people and some folks here in the city, and a lot of comments that I've heard, and I've gotten a few, not a lot, but a few phone calls about the pool, and they're coming. The majority of them are coming from parents with smaller toddler kids. And, they commented that they don't go to the pool, and they haven't gone to the pool basically because, what we historically called the baby pool, has been closed. So what I heard kind of led me to believe that, if we had something to accommodate those kids, that probably the attendance at the pool, we would see an increase in that attendance. So I believe that, and I hear favorable comments, and I'm all for and would strongly support, no matter what we do, that we seriously do this zero entry, call it what you like, zero entry pool or kiddie pool or whatever. Because, capture back that age group that we've lost over the last couple of years. And most people talk favorably about that, and myself as well. I think that's, there's a lot of other nice things in those plans in each concept, but my main priority would be, at least whichever concept that we do, that we get that zero entry pool designed in there.
Okay.
So, okay. I think probably everybody's kind of
Hold on
leading.
1 second, if you would, please.
Sure.
You brought up a comment about, you thought it was a priority for the pathways and the bridges in the park. Because those bridges are not handicap accessible, we reached out to HUD to see if we could use CDBG money, because typically anything that has to do with handicap accessibility qualifies. It does not.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought this was great. We can get new decks put on them or whatever. They won't approve it. So that's not an option. If we would do that, we would have to do it ourselves. And they're not wide enough, so they need to be taken out and new ones put in. The pictures that are in the book are fantastic. They just really accent the park. But that option is not available. We have gotten a letter back from HUD that says that would not qualify. So, Kim, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. That's it's unfortunate news, but I'm glad you checked it out. I would have thought it qualified for CDBG money as well, just from my knowledge of it. But at any rate, obviously the pool is the number one thing. I mean, if you even look through this master plan, and the public has identified that as the number one thing. It's been, this has been a long process. I don't know, over probably 3 years now. We've been talking about this, but the water park plan was the most exciting thing, actually. The thing on 34th Street, and your concern was crossing 34th Street. I had that concern as well. The positive about that was that it allows for a community building to be built where the pool is now. And you say, well, we have a community building. We do. And, just like with everything else, I mean, it's at its mature age. And I think that, at some point in time, we're going to be looking at that community building and how that's going to be replaced. But I am not advocating for the water park for this one reason. It has me very concerned that part of that water park is put into the 100-year flood zone. If you go on the West Virginia flood map, you will see that. So for me, that's a non-starter. I don't want to put a multi-million-dollar pool in a flood zone. But I like that. I sure like that idea of that spot of being able to phase in a community building later that can include indoor activities, basketball, whatever. I mean, that was a fabulous idea. When I look at the pool, and these two concepts, concept A and concept B, and I don't know that we can't even say that we shouldn't even consider the original concept that Pickering came up with last year that was presented to us. In that concept, you get that you can have that zero entry pool in the baby pool, right? Because you can do it where you have the spot where the baby pool is, you can put a zero entry pool, okay? And then you have the depth for the little tots, right? From all the research I've done, and certainly from looking at all the pools that have been built around us, that splash pad element is really what families want, what kids want. There's a lot of advantages to that, and I think that we really need to consider a splash pad element in anything that we do. In the two concepts, concept A and B, that were presented from last week by Mr. Christie, concept A keeps the original footprint of the pool, and it's hard not to like that climbing area and those slides. I don't know how that works where that dumps into, in concept A, how that works where that dumps into a really deep portion of the pool. I have some concerns with that. But I do really like the splash pad. I like the wall. There's a lot of good stuff there. I personally am not convinced that the shower room and the concession stand, that building doesn't need to be replaced because, I don't know if y'all have had a chance to have gone through there, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like when you do home improvements and you put on a really great roof and it's great, but, everything else is falling apart in your house. So, so I would like to, as we move forward, to get pricing on that. I know that was part of the first plan that we had last year from Pickering and Associates, okay? And it's not the new shower rooms, concession stand. That is not considered in concept A or concept B, okay? Concept B that's a super cool idea as well, because then you have the two pools that the mayor just talked about. So now you have that other pool where you can have all those fun activities with the kids, because you have a zero entry, and then you have slides and rock climbing and all that, and then you still have the splash pad, and you still have the pool, the lap pool that you can have. We could have a swim team. I think, that would be, we used to have a swim team before in Vienna Rec, we don't now, but that could be something that we can do in the future. So it's just hard to make a decision, but as which design is the best. They all have pros and they all have cons. But for me, somebody would have to convince me that the water park idea would work in that area. So to me, that's just a non-starter. But whatever, I hope that this will be the first thing that we can move on, because I think to be honest, we may have the pool open in June, but We may not. I mean, there's not, no matter anything that we do. So for me personally, I'm just saying, when I think about the pool, I think about it in terms of it not being open this summer, and that's unfortunate. But I want to see it definitely be opened in 2023. So that's why we need to kind of be quick about what decisions we want to make. And that's all I want to say about the pool, but I hope we'll continue to go on, and I have other thoughts, especially about Spencer's Landing, but that's my idea about the pool.
Oh, it's your chance to talk about anything. It's not strictly the pool.
Well, I understand. I just didn't know if anybody had more comments regarding the pool. We'll go on to anything else.
Tom, you're left. If you have anything about the pool.
Microphone.
I'm against people crossing 34th Street. I think that's, to create a lot of potential grief for that. And that's my opinion.
Okay.
And I think we ought to have detailed costs on each phase and each component. And I think that would help us decide which is the best way to go.
Okay.
Because it's going to be expensive regardless of how.
Yes, it is.
I know we have the Pickering's concept over there on the wall. Do we have that in digital form somewhere that we could, because I would like to be able to print that off and like see it next
I
to
have it.
things.
I'll email it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Roger, Les?
And one more comment, Kim talked about if the pool was relocated to that area on 34th, and I have the same concerns that I think a lot of you do with that area. I mean, that was a neat design, but I'm not totally comfortable with the location. But Kim talked about then utilizing the area now where the pool is for a community building or a community center. Also, something that, has jumped out at us, when we look at our recreation is the soccer program and the need to do something relative to soccer fields. And I don't know, we have some, Rod or Jack maybe, or might know the answer to this, but I mean, is that area up there where the pool is now? I mean, would that be a big enough area for a soccer field? I'm kind of doubting it, but I'm just curious if anybody knows. Maybe for children's soccer field. Not for a regular. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the main allure for me of wanting of liking that new location for the pool was because I liked that whole community building, indoor rec building up on the hill. Like that was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to put that right there? But I'm okay with the pool staying where it is and revamping it there, which goes back to the fact that I think we do need to update and enlarge, make it more accommodating and more functional with our current community building. I don't see why we couldn't resituate it. Does it need to sit where it's sitting? It could still be on that same tract of land, but could we, situate it, turn it or make it bigger or shove it more towards the back and, whatever. But right now it's just right in the middle of a parking lot is how it feels. So I think we do need to look at having a better just community building and not have it attached to the rec building. I think maybe an indoor rec facility would be great, maybe on the other side of the hill where the small rec building is now. That one's not sufficient for very many things and needs massively improved. So you can't improve that place. It would just need to come down and build something new. So there would be I believe we would have great support and desire for a rec building, indoor rec facility that would have maybe room for like 3 basketball courts, maybe, a walking track or something like that. It would get utilized by a lot of people, residents and non-residents. You could do tournaments, you could do all kinds of things there too. I'm going to kind of shoot down a few other things. Is that okay if I just kind of keep going here?
Time out.
Time out.
On the old community building?
Yeah.
we've looked at that in the past. And the problem with that is if you make that building a different shape or a different place, one, the traffic flow with all the parents that are picking up the kids from Jackson, that place that when school changes is a beehive.
Oh, I know.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure you do. Okay. And the second thing is, if you go to the expense of building a nicer facility, you won't have adequate parking. There's just not enough spaces there. So, I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be revamped or what have you, but over in the park, the other one that's there, it's fairly small and it's probably underused because of, field hockey is about the only thing that goes on in there most of the time. And there's 2 meeting rooms, but one
Yeah.
of those could be certainly upgraded, but the one down in, next to Jackson, that traffic situation and the parking issues, there's just not a lot of parking.
Yeah.
And you could build a parking lot across the road where,
Yeah.
but there again, you bring up the issue of crossing 34th Street, which is always a problem. So just to comment on that, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. All right, yeah. All right, the sledding hill. I don't think we should make it, I mean, I kind of feel like it's souped up, and it's very cool, but I don't think we should do a souped up sledding hill that's like year-round and attraction and all this type of thing. I do think we could do a few things to improve it. I've been to the sledding hill a few times this year already. I didn't go down because I don't like that kind of thing. But I do think that maybe if we did, basic netting that went up and protected the kids from flying into the woods would be good. And having some sort of a handrail, whether it's a chain or a thick rope that you can kind of pull yourself up on, because that's a long trek up there. Even those little legs get tired going up the hill, especially when it's slippery and that snow starts packing down. So if you'd had some sort of a handrail or hand help to pull themselves up on, and then put the fence, on that side, then that way it protects them and the sledders aren't going to, get hurt flying into the handrail either. So I think there are some basic, very modest improvements we could make to the sled hill without it becoming this major ordeal. I really like the corridor concept, connecting everything. I think that's something we could work towards. Not top priority, though. The observation tower, I really like that idea. I don't know what all the things are that we need to consider for McDonough being the wildlife preserve and that kind of thing, but I really like that observation tower idea. And the bike path thing is good too. I think the underpass would be awesome, but it would be a massive undertaking, and I think it should be attached to the corridor if we pursue that. Okay, as far as things at Jackson Park, on the Rosemar side of Jackson Park, I do not agree with taking out the baseball fields. I don't think that the baseball fields and the baseball program is being fully utilized to its full potential. I think there's a whole lot more that could happen there. And yes, soccer needs more space, but I don't think we are fully using all of the acreage that we have in order to accommodate what we want to do for soccer and what we want to do for baseball and softball. So, I mean, I've kind of written things out, the way I think we could do it, but I don't think we should take out fields 1 and 2. I do think we should have some sort of turf and, multi-purpose, artificial stuff that could be rain or shine. I don't know, and this was not my baby, it was Mike's, but nothing was said in the CEC report about the hill. So I don't know if anything there was considered, whether we take more of it out or whether we just build something up on top of it. But I think that conversation does need to go further because it is a big piece of property, and we could definitely do something with that. Yeah, I could go into more detail about all that. And kind of to piggyback that, then I'm going to jump down to Spencer's Landing and say, I don't think we should have soccer at Spencer's Landing. I think Spencer's Landing, when I think about it, I think it's community, it's recreational. I don't see it as being competitive. I think we should keep the competitive sports, whether it's rec or travel or whatever, on the competitive side of the park. I think the Spencer's Landing, I liked almost everything about it except for the soccer fields. I just think we could utilize that large field in a different way. I think it would be a deterrent for families and just normal people that want to go down there and enjoy the park when it's full of tournaments and little kids and all of that stuff. So I don't like putting them together personally. I think like Ritter Park, when I was down in Huntington for a long time, I loved going there, and they had big, wide open spaces, grassy spaces where, you could take your blanket out and read a book, and you could throw Frisbee, and you could, play with your dog, and you could do all these things. And it was just free space. And that was a really valuable thing to us at that time. So not sure why we need a splash pad down there also when we already have a splash pad up there, and it is seasonal. So you're going to kind of tie up a space for something that's seasonal down there. Maybe something that kind of randomly shoots up water every once in a while, but then if it's not that season, it's just more walking space. I don't know. And a question, so I know that Jackson Middle School has been working on these designs. Like they had this big project that they were working on every Friday, trying to come up with designs for Spencer's Landing. But I haven't heard when they're going to present or what happened with that, because I think we need to hear from them. From what I understand, it was a pretty big deal, and it really consumed the students, and they really were into it. And so I think we do need to hear from them to find out what their ideas and concepts are for Spencer's Landing, to make sure we've considered that input also. I'm going to keep going a couple more things, then you can all jump in. Okay, I'm on a roll. Spencer Park, I don't really think we should take away like the actual basketball court. I like adding some bank shot or something else to it, but I don't really think we should take away the basketball. It's used. Every time I'm by there, it seems like there's somebody out there. I think we should find out how much sound comes out of the music thing, just for consideration for the neighbors around, because they might not want to hear it all day. It's a very cool idea, but if it's too musical, I'm not going to say noisy, but if it's too musical, it might not be something that neighbors want all the time. And the play area is fine. Maybe adding some more seating for parents, because that was always one of my pet peeves, was having to follow my kids around the whole time when I couldn't just sit and watch them. I think 12th Street has potential. I like that we kind of looked at that.
12th Street needs pulled.
Oh, well, I still like it.
We don't own the property.
Oh, well, I still like
that's
it.
not going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, that is the nutshell of what I sent to Tim in my 2 pages. And I obviously have a lot of opinions and details about things.
Okay, so let me give you an answer on your comment about the Jackson School project.
Yeah.
They had it scheduled. They were coming. And then for whatever reason, they said they'd have to do it at a later date.
Okay.
I've been up there with them. It's fantastic. When you see what these kids have done, I mean, they really went to work on this, and it's great. So as soon as Mrs. Elodie gets the class prepared, they will be here. They'll make the full presentation. The kids are actually going to do it. And they've got drawings, and they've got cost estimates, and they really did their homework on this. It was a great project, really good project.
Okay,
So,
good.
Anyway, we're waiting on them because they had to reschedule for whatever reason. I don't know.
All right, good, thank you.
Okay. Okay, who's next?
Okay, well, I'd like to go next if I can. So I think Spencer's Landing is an awesome opportunity for waterfront park. I agree with what Melissa's saying. I would like to see that not have soccer fields on it, just because it has great potential down there without it including, we have, a ball field or a soccer field or whatever. But I have to come down to my first question about this, is what can really be done down there? What can be moved? My number one question to start off with is the oil derrick down there.
It can never be moved. That's Mr. Jill's. He has a 200-foot right-of-way on both sides of that because there's a pipeline that runs all the way up River Road, all the way down. You can't touch that.
So
that one section where the where the book walk is,
Yes.
that section right there needs to be left alone because of his equipment.
Is it on this, where is it on this?
It's where they're suggesting the Gold Star Memorial get moved to, basically is where the oil derrick
Yeah,
is.
that oil derrick cannot be moved unless Mr. Dills would sell it, but there's still an oil, still a pipeline going all the way up.
So when the city purchased that product, that would not convey, we could not get, not that we want to buy an oil derrick, but what I'm saying is, you've got a piece of property now that somebody owns a big, encumbrance on it, basically.
I mean, that was just part of the deal. I mean, you can always, Mr. Dills could always sell that to us, but, I have no idea whether he'd be agreeable with that. It's like the two tanks that are over there on the far side.
So who owns those two tanks on the far side?
He does. It's all part
So
of his
it's
oil
all,
and gas.
it's all him, that's all him, and so that was not, we didn't have the opportunity to.
That's been there for years.
Well, I know, but when we bought it in 2012, 2014, or whenever that happened, go ahead, Russ, I know you're ready to jump
Well,
in.
no, I'm just waiting.
I'm just curious about it.
My recollection, and it's been several years since I looked at the paperwork, but the property owner that owned the vast majority of the Manville, what we commonly refer to as the Manville property, did not own that section. So, I mean, it's not going to, there was no, I don't recall there being any conversation to buy the derrick. It's, we bought the property subject to the encumbrance. I mean, it's there for as long as it continues to operate, or as long until he wants to sell it. I mean, you could put stuff around it, but you couldn't do anything that would interfere with his ability to use the property.
Yeah, and that's one of
Yeah.
the things that has to be taken into consideration is every so many years, he has to do a cleanup and a rebuild on that thing, which he just did last year.
I watched him do it, yeah.
And so whatever you build right there, he has the option to go right in there and, tear it up.
So then that just puts a huge question mark on the master plan regarding Spencer's Landing for me, because it's like everything in there is not really doable, which comes, my other questions about that are the land covenants. I know the land covenant is like you cannot dig, or, you can't do anything unless you contact the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, and you go through the whole process. But is that just on those specific sites? And I think there's 8 of them.
3.
Well, I just looked this up online. I just saw the map, the attached map and so on. There's SS 10, SS 13, 22, the parking lot, A and B, and the Veterans Memorial. Those are all part of that soil encampment. And okay, well, it seems like, because like the soccer fields, where they're envisioned in that master plan is a spot that, according to the map that's at the county, you can't do you have to go through that covenant, which then says, okay, well, we want to disturb this soil, so, we're going to have to come up with this plan with the DEP and do whatever they tell us to do, and all the inspections and all that stuff, kind of like what we had to do to get it to begin with. So I see everything that you want to do at Spencer's Landing is now all kind of messed up because the oil derrick and these covenants. I mean, you could potentially, money solves all problems, right? If you had enough money, you could do it, but I'm not suggesting that. So I don't know. In other words, I just feel like Spencer's Landing, it then becomes a big question mark to me of what you can do.
Well, there are 3 areas down there that have been encapsulated. We removed the dirt, we removed the contamination, and we put fresh dirt that was certified to be good on top of that. The 3 areas that are designated, you can't remove any soil from down there, but there's nothing that prevents you from building up. All right? So you can add more dirt to it, you can do whatever you want in those areas, and it's perfectly fine. Okay? And, when it was redone, it was certified for recreational use.
Right.
Okay? There's not going to be anybody live there. There won't be any homes built on it. There won't be anything like that. But, going out there with your family for an afternoon to have a picnic is perfectly fine. All right? So,
well, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm really not. I just read this whole thing like an hour ago, and it has, see attached A, and there are those.
We'll get Mr. Leach in here when he gets back in and have him explain to you. I mean,
Yeah, I would love for it. I mean, that document is available online. Anybody can go and look at it and read it. It's very specific, and it lays out where these areas are. I mean, there's a map. It shows you, and it tells you, I mean, SS10, SS13, 22, parking lot, blah, 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 blah. So, because when I mentioned the parking lot being, that's capped because it's a parking lot, okay? But what is envisioned in the master plan is like, there's an area where they, dump off the food truck, or there's that common area where I think there's that splash pad that you were just talking about, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a restroom there, concessions, that kind of thing, kind of a little plaza area. That is part of that parking lot that's under the covenant that's on the county's website, under that paperwork. So
it sounds like we need to start with our limitations first.
dang.
If we started with our limitations, like, okay, let's have a fresh, clean map and say, okay, can't dig here, can't dig here. We can add to these areas, whatever the limitation. Okay, the oil derrick is here. We have to make sure access is available in this particular area. It sounds like we need to, and if there's mussels or whatever in the river and whatever else, let's start with our limitations first and then build around them and use the limitations as best we can. I mean, if we can still do something with an area, we just can't dig there, then let's do something there. Or if we can't disturb the parking lot because it's already capped, then we need to design around that and make that part of it, right?
so that's a 17-acre tract of ground.
Okay.
Every bit of remediation that is down there would fit in this room right here. Okay? It would fit in this room. All right? So that little section, and it's spread out in 3 different locations, okay? That little area might cause you to move your building or whatever thing you want to put down there 10 feet one way or the other, but it won't interrupt whatever the...
Well, okay, but still, I think it would be helpful to start with
I agree with you.
Okay.
And Jim Leach, we can get Jim and we'll get a map and say, okay, because we got survey maps, we've got it all.
Yeah.
And we've GPSed every bit of that in there.
Really, the Gold Star Memorial is right where the oil derrick is.
Exactly. So
really
that's
is.
my
First
point.
off, the Gold Star Memorial needs to stay right where it's at.
It's
It was
right in the
put-
middle of everything, though.
The reason for that was for handicap accessibility.
But
we
it'd be
have a lot of
handicapped
veterans.
accessible there, too. It would be handicapped accessible anywhere you put it.
There's a piece of concrete underneath that thing that's about as big as this table clear there, okay? You're not going to move that. You'll have to rebuild the whole thing.
I'm for it. I think it design, if we put it into the overall concept of how we want to design it, I don't think we should design Spencer's Landing around the Gold Star Memorial, because even where it is, even if we start adding features and things to it, I feel like the memorial, and I think Jim Christie had even mentioned it last week, it's going to end up getting kind of lost in everything. It's not going to be a feature anymore. Right now it's a feature because it's the only thing down there and you can obviously see it. But if we leave it where it is and then build around it, it's going to get lost. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just absolutely for it if it's the best plan.
Well, for me,
Cost a fortune to move it.
It will cost a lot of money, yes, Tom, but it's doable. It's like anything else. We put it in there, we can certainly take.
But,
I would never be in favor of moving it.
well, the cost
Okay.
of it would be.
That's the nicest Gold Star Memorial there is anywhere in this part.
And it might be, but maybe it wasn't strategically put in the right place because we didn't have an overall plan. Like there was no plan for Spencer's Landing. There was no like concepts drawn out. It was just the first thing that made it down there. And I hate that. I hate that it might be in the wrong place, but it is beautiful, but we want to keep it that way.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's not worry about that kind of stuff until
Yeah.
we get further down the road, because
That's fine.
whatever plans picked out, whatever other things that are there, we'll figure a way to put them in there, okay?
okay, well, I've been trying to say this for a few minutes now. I think for me, step one, we need to get Mr. Leach or whoever, probably Mr. Leach, to go through the thing that is filed, the covenants that are filed with the county regarding the property. I mean, I don't mean to be disagreeable, as I said a few minutes ago. You say 3, I'm telling you, there's more than that because I just looked at it. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I would love for somebody to explain it to me. I'd love to look at the map. I'd love to read the language. And so that we understand exactly what we can do down there. And I think that I have a lot of frustration about Spencer's Landing in the sense that what you just said, Melissa, this emphasizes the fact that we have to do this planning because things just kind of happened down there and they weren't planned. I'm sorry, when I read this master plan last week, when I saw it in the flip book, what was imagined down there at Spencer's Landing on the northwest side was to keep the trees and everything the way they are, to have the wetland walk through there, and to put on the southwest corner that kayak launch and a little boat dockage down there, okay? And, you know, over around Thanksgiving, I think it was, all the trees got excavated out, and that whole, it's gone. Which means, okay, well, that's another thing. Nobody knew about it. There's no planning. Action's happening, but nobody knows what's going on. There's been a lot of movement at Spencer's Landing without a plan. So for me, I really, really want to see what's possible down there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom, comments?
I think we need to know the cost of a lot of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're spreading out a lot of things throughout the entire city, and every one of them's going to cost money. So I think that's a big consideration is how you're going to pay for it.
I think that memorial costs about $40,000.
65.
65.
Yeah.
That's way off. That's not even close enough.
Well, and that's another reason why we need to be good stewards of our money and plan ahead so that we don't have a $65,000 project in a less than ideal area. So let's just put it in the right place to begin with and this part of a plan.
I bet it would cost $20,000 to move it.
I don't know, Tom.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
But it would. I think moving that memorial would take long and hard before we do that.
Well, I think if you look at the diagram they did, you could reroute the pathways and still make it work right where it's at. Okay, but we'll see where the rest of the plans are. You know, I'd still like to see a walking trail. I'd like to see the parking lot expanded. I'd like to see the amphitheater down there so that we could have band concerts and maybe outdoor plays, something along those lines. And I think that there's a big need for picnic shelters down there because people use it every day to go down there and eat lunch or whatever. So there's a lot of things that could be done. But even if you put those amenities in it, you're still going to have a tremendous amount of dirt down there that you can do something with or leave it as green space to play Frisbee with your kids or whatever, would fit. I've had people ask for an outdoor volleyball court, which, that's fine. We need to think along those lines. But I still think that when the discussion in the map for the designs for McDonough Park, I think we should explore the possibility of that underpass to get underneath Rosemar Road for access to McDonough. That intrigues me because of the safety issue. It's terrible to cross Rosemar Road. The traffic's too fast right there. But that underpass, if it could be done at a reasonable cost, I think that thing would open that up for a lot more usage than it's getting now. I think that one of the things, and you talked about starting out simple, I think a playground over at the baseball fields would be a tremendous idea. There's a lot of parents bring their, one son or daughter to play a sport, and then you got 2 other ones there. Mm-hmm. They need something to do. Mm-hmm. So a playground over there, I think, would be an excellent addition to that, and we could do that now. Mm-hmm. That's not a huge cost.
Right, correct.
Okay, but I just think that when you look at those things, you start talking about things that can be done easily. Replace the bridges in Jackson Park, pave that walking trail so that you would have a circle over there down along the basketball courts and over the bridges by the dog park, and then come back up by by the playgrounds and what have you. Those things don't cost a lot of money, and they could be done relatively easy. Okay. So I think we've got enough information to give back to Jim Christie on the different ideas. I don't think that we're ready to make a direction, step in any direction yet because of the different ideas that have floated out, but at least we know what people are interested in, so I think that'll work. Anything else that someone would like for me to include in my report to Jim Christie
Well,
or Tim Roberts?
yeah, I actually would think it would be helpful for purposes of the Manville property, because I'm looking at, and I'm assuming it's the same document that Ms. Williams looked at, the land use covenant for the 17 acres, but I only see 4 distinct restrictions, and really it's 3. You can't use it for residential land. You can't take the groundwater out of it. There's already an ordinance, or take groundwater out and use it for any purpose except for groundwater monitoring. And Vienna already has, at the EPA's request, passed an ordinance saying you can't drill wells in Vienna anyway, and we did that a long time ago. Excavate, drill, penetrate the ground surface unless the following requirements are met, and then it says, it lets out 6 things that says if you're going to drill and do, you have to do in order, or if you're going to excavate, you have to do it in this fashion. And the last one is to build any buildings that don't have a subslab, vapor barrier, and or ventilation system adequate to prevent exposure to vapors in soil and groundwater as determined by a licensed remediation specialist. And I'm assuming
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's 3 kind of 4 restrictions you can do on the property, but I haven't heard too much that prevents the city from implementing some of the plans. You just have to take steps. You can't just go down like you do now and go over here to the park and build something on it. You have to take specific steps, and then, of course, that's going to add cost to it, but I don't think it's quite as limited as what you might think. And I'd recommend, and I'll send this to council so they can see it, the restrictions, and I'd recommend sending it to your planner so that they have an idea too, and it might affect.
I mean, that's my question, Russ, because like over, there's a covenant over like where they're considering putting the soccer field. So I understand if you're going to break the ground, because you're going to have to break the ground to do anything, you have to follow their remediation plan. You have to notice them, and you have to come up with a plan, and things have to be tested and then built and retested and blah, 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 all that stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
It's just, it's going to be expensive and a long process,
Well, anytime you add the state to anything, I mean, that adds an extra layer. So yeah, it's gonna make it longer. I can't speculate as to how long. It logically has to be longer than it would be if that layer wasn't there. But if you didn't have the property, you wouldn't be able to do anything with it at all. And so, I mean, yeah, it's just something
right.
that you have to deal with.
Just to put this in, the proper place.
Yeah.
To have this, Spencer's Landing here, what's everybody's recommendation? What do you think? We don't even know what our limitations are. We need to have that discussion of that document right there.
Yeah, I'll send it to council. It's public record. If you look up, you can look it up at the Wood County website in the online document inquiry. It's an amendment that's filed, same as any other thing that goes into the record room. But I'll send a copy to council so that they can see it. But it has 4 limitations. One of them is, to be honest with you, mirrors the limitation that's in the deed. When Manville conveyed the property to Structures Resources, they did so with several restrictive covenants that run with the land, one of which is you can't use it for residential use anyway, which is what kept it from being sold for years before the city bought it. But the others are, it's fairly common sense, and it's fairly common whenever you have a reclaimed DEP, EPA type site, that there are limitations on how you can use it and how you can manipulate it. And you're right, it's going to add some cost.
Can you send us something on the oil derrick situation also, like the 200 feet kind of thing, and whatever we need to know?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll look at, And don't let me forget, because that's where I'm at in my life, is I forget things.
I understand.
Don't let me forget, I should have something, I have a plat for Manville, and it should have the location of that on it. But I just don't remember because it's been 7 or 8, well, 6 or 7 years anyway, since I'd seen it.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Isn't that oil derrick over on the perimeter of the property?
No, it's right in the center,
Is it this?
right dead in the center.
Yeah.
When you walk straight in, there's a picnic area to your right, and it's in the fence.
Right.
Okay, but when you look at the survey, you'll see that square where the oil derrick sits is not ours. Okay, we didn't put it in the plan. It's not ours.
Yeah, we couldn't buy it because
Yeah.
it wasn't for sale and Structures Resources didn't own it.
Yeah.
The thing to consider, and lastly, is just because the derrick's there doesn't mean it's going to spoil everything either.
Right.
I mean, you go to these bigger cities, they hide their cell phone towers in trees.
Yeah.
You know, you have buildings that look like buildings, but they have something else in them entirely. And I'm sure that you could speak with the fellow that owns it and maybe come to an agreement to maybe lessen its visual impact on your ideas. And, but anyway, just a thought. I'll send this out to y'all directly.
The reference in the master plan to a BMX track or biking paths over in McDonough. Jack, what was the language that you mentioned earlier about the activities that were to be eligible in that area?
Well, I mean, I want to check, be 100% positive, because I haven't got to look at it. I'm going to go ahead and talk to somebody here in the next few days, find it in the courthouse. But I think it calls for passive recreation in the beginning when the property was given in the agreement and where the McDonald's agreement was.
But are we talking about the covenant, the restriction in the McDonough? The only thing, and there may be another deed out there, because I pulled that up when Melissa was asking about it. And I've actually looked at the language, and it basically says you just can't use it, quote, and shall at no time devote said land or any part thereof for commercial use or profit. Now, it's a little vague, but
I think there was some place at one time, Russ, maybe when it was in the agreement with the city,
it might be. I mean,
that was being given an extension that was to be used for passive recreation, and that's what they spelled out.
yeah, it says that the entitled, the limitation on the property says that it's expressly understood and agreed that the property herein described and hereby conveyed is to be used by the city as a public park and recreational ground and is to be enjoyed for such purposes by the public generally. The city shall have the right to adopt reasonable rules and regulations in regard to said property, and by the acceptance of this gift and donation, it obligates itself to preserve and use the property hereby conveyed for the purposes and objects herein set forth, and shall at no time devote said land or any part thereof for commercial use or profit.
No, because of the wildlife part of it, is it like registered somewhere where we have to do certain things, or we have to stock things, or we have to whatever? I was wondering, I didn't know if there was like a noise
I think it's just
regulation.
description of a wildlife refuge is a wildlife refuge involves passive recreation. And by passive recreation, when you look it up, it says by definition, that means walking, enjoyment of nature, passive type things, sitting, enjoying, bird watching, everything. It doesn't get into competitive. Competitive is definitely not an aspect of passive, which is what wildlife refuge fall under, just by the very definition when you look up passive recreation.
That's why, because whenever I think of wildlife refuge, I think of it just like the no hunting zone. But I didn't think about recreation being part of a wildlife refuge.
Wildlife, given the priority in a wildlife refuge,
Yeah.
secondary. The primary interest and purpose for wildlife refuge tends to wildlife.
Okay.
I have a question, Jack, about McDonough, because the bike paths that were suggested, and on one hand, that sounds like a really great idea, but oddly enough, that's the one thing that some people have reached out about to me, because it's like, well, you get bike paths up there, then they'll eventually get onto the walking trails and the paths, and that can be very destructive.
They would be on the walking trail.
Yeah, so he was talking about moving it, but
And years ago, that was an issue that the park board went through. And at that time, I forget the discussion, it's probably been 15, 20 years ago. Because we had horses, we had people taking horses up there, we also had some bicycling up there. And the discussion back then was, this should be for the enjoyment for people for walking. How to get some mountain biking, I'm just telling you what.
Right.
So wait, so the bike paths that was talked about in the plan, that's not exclusively for bikes, that would, or,
Be bikes, walking and everything. I mean, I think that by the plan, they're talking about using what we call zigzag trails, which is as you go up the hill into the wildlife refuge, right there partway up on the hill on the right, there's a footbridge that you go across, and it takes you over into a hollow that lays where Lake Betsy is, and the road that's going up the hill for the parking lot. There's a whole area back in there where we had designed at one time a lake to back in that area. But and I see it being in that area because it's a little bit offset from everything, from part of the refuge, but it's still part of the refuge.
I'm seeing on here, it says proposed mountain bike trails, and then there's proposed new hiking trails. Like it's specifically saying mountain bike trails, 3.5 miles of it. That it wouldn't be for walking, it would be for mountain bikes.
Mountain bikes to the right, and the other part that he's saying about proposed new trails, I think those are strictly walking trails.
Yeah.
He's talking about adding into the park. And that's an idea plan. The other reason we never added the trail, and it's up to everybody else, it just felt like to me, and when I presented stuff to the board, that there need to be some areas in the wildlife refuge that people weren't in all the time, since the main consideration is wildlife. Seeing to me there are obviously quiet areas or some areas in the park that we didn't have to put practice through all the time and everything. Another thing we used to get in trouble with was people going through the refuge right before deer season or during deer season and trying to drive some of the deer on the refuge.
Is that a problem?
Used to be.
No.
Driving them onto the refuge or,
Walking by, they're walking, but it's called driving deer, and one time we used to have trouble back on the back side where above the dry dam area, there was property in the area back in
So you're saying I can't put a feeder up there either?
Plant apple trees, Russ. All right, anything else?
One more comment. It just goes back to the fields 1 and 2. I think the concept was, a turf, and then so we can use it for soccer as well. I think those seasons come so close together that might be a problem with that field. I'm not for getting rid of baseball fields, and the soccer program has grown tremendously, but I think his numbers were way off when he spoke last week about the number of kids that are in the baseball, softball, because I write those, I go to those park board meetings and I write those numbers down every time, and I was like, that's not right, and it's not. There's a lot more use in the baseball, softball programs than what he said. So I think that's a big consideration. I want to see soccer grow. I want to see the kids do, all these recreational stuff. That's not the case, but I'm not so hip on that part of the plan either.
yeah, I think we just, as far as recreation, the sports part of what we do, we have a set amount of acreage. We have land, and we need to decide what we want to do with it and do it well. So if we need to move the smaller fields, 5 and 6, over to the other side of the road, take out some of the hillside, kind of behind where the rec building or the trailer is, have a nice just baseball complex all on one side of the road, and then the other side could be all soccer or something like that. If we have 2, 3 great soccer fields, we know that is our, for lack of a better word, that's our limit. We're going to run a great soccer program with these 3 fields. Right now, what we have is not enough. We know that. The rotation, it didn't work out to go up to the football field, but they can do that this year. So I know that will help with the use of not wearing down field 4 very much. But, and then let's do, get our baseball fields up and get them improve the little things that need to be done down there and run a great baseball program, have travel teams come in, do tournaments, do all that stuff, have different offerings for rec, different levels of play, all of that. You can do that. So we just got to say, okay, we've got this much land. Here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it well. We know we don't have enough for soccer. We need to add for soccer, but I don't see baseball and softball going away. If anything, they can grow under more ideal circumstances.
Sure.
All right. So we'll pass on your comments, and we'll see where we end up with this. With that, that concludes our agenda for this evening, so we move to council comments. Any comments this evening?
I have a comment.
Okay. Having said that, would you like to give an update on the number of people that have signed up for the council seat?
Oh, no, Kimberly does have a comment.
I really do.
You
As
said
much
were
as you
done.
probably know, I'm not finished. I do have a comment. Wishful thinking, right? I love the fact that the city bit the bullet and had this master plan for the parks. I think it's fabulous. We have a master plan for the things at the utility board, water and sewer. But it underscores for me the need for a master plan for the city. And the last master plan that was done for the city was in 2007, before we ever bought John Manville, ever owned any of that property. So many things have changed. And I know that there's a master plan being prepared by West Virginia University that somehow is getting done, but there's no involvement from any of the stakeholders here in Vienna. So I know we're getting ready to go into the budget process, and it just makes me think about maybe what we should do in this budget is come up with the money to have a professional master plan done for the city of Vienna. The city of Parkersburg did one. I don't know how much it cost. I think it was like, I'm not going to say how much I think it was, but these are affordable. I think as we are going forward, I think we need to know what direction we're going in. And I think it would be very, very beneficial for us to have a master plan that's developed by us, by our leaders in the community, by our citizens in the community, to see where we're going, far beyond us. So that's my comment.
Any other comments?
I have a question. Do we have, as we're approaching budget season, do we have a schedule of presenters and when we start that?
You should have already had it. Amy's got them all scheduled out.
Has anybody else gotten it?
I have it, but I have the schedule, but I didn't get it from you.
I don't have it.
I don't
The
have it.
schedule's out. She's got them all broke down by the different departments on different nights, and then the outside agencies, same as she's done in the past. But
Yeah, that's what I
if you
thought.
don't, just ask her for it.
It's not in the Dropbox. It's not.
Anyway, it's done.
Okay.
There was an email in the Dropbox that said what days we were going to be talking about it, but it didn't break it down by department. So like February 3rd, we kick off with building inspection, planning and zoning, code enforcement, police, fire, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And then on the 10th, we have, the mayor's office, recorder, so on and so forth.
Okay. All right, then I'll need to find that or request it. Okay. We have had, sorry, I was looking for another document. We've had 4 people file so far, and all 4 of them have filed for the temporary placement that we will decide as council and for the ballot, being on the ballot. So,
Okay.
yes.
Tomorrow's the deadline.
Yes, tomorrow's the deadline for
The
the
temporary.
temporary, and then Saturday is the deadline for the
Yes.
ballot.